Meeting will come to order. I'm supposed to do a countdown, so I'm going to do that really quick. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So now we're officially to order here. This meeting is going to be fully virtual, and so I'm going to go over a few housekeeping rules. For today's meeting, the chair of the staff designated by the chair may mute participants' microphones when they're not under recognition for the purpose of eliminating background. Everybody was really good last time, so I don't anticipate any problems this time. Members, though, you're responsible for unmuting yourself. If we notice that you have not unmuted yourself, I will ask you if you'd like the staff to unmute you. You can please indicate by nodding your head, and the staff will unmute your microphone. I remind all members and witnesses, they should see it on the screen. If they don't, let us know. There's a 5-minute clock, and the 5-minute clock will apply. If there's a technical issue, we will move to the next member until the issue is resolved, and you will keep the balance of your time. Once again, you'll notice a clock on your screen, and it's going to show how much time is remaining. At 1 minute, the clock will turn yellow. At 30 seconds remaining, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that their time has almost expired. When your time has expired, the clock will turn red, and I will, when it turns red, recognize the next member. In terms of speaking order, we're going to follow the order set forth in the House rules, beginning with the chair and the ranking member. The members present at the time the hearing is called to order will be recognized in the order of seniority. And finally, members not present at the time the hearing is called to order. Finally, House rules require me to remind you that we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or our markups. So this email address has been provided to your staff. One other piece of housekeeping, we are going to have votes during this. When the votes take place, I will give a list of order of members to speak. I will turn the gavel over to the most senior member present. I will go vote, and then I will come right back. So we will keep this meeting going forward so everyone can ask their questions. So without further ado, I'm going to make a few remarks here. This morning, the subcommittee will receive testimony and an update on military service academies. And I welcome our 3 witnesses. Lieutenant Darryl A, Superintendent of West Point, founded in 1802. Vice Admiral Sean Buck, Superintendent of the Naval Academy, founded in 1845. And Lieutenant Richard Clark, Superintendent of the Air Force Academy, founded in 1954. So I do know the Air Force Academy is 66 years old because that's the year I was born too. So we were established at the same time. Gentlemen, I want to thank you all for being here today. And I appreciate you being here to share the current state of military service academies. Each of the service academies house some of the best and brightest of our young generation. Many of these young men and women will hold leadership positions in their respective services for the next 30 years. Given this fact, it's imperative that they are all well educated and not in only executing military missions of the future, but also grounded in the ideals in which this nation has been built and to the oath that they take to serve. Each of these topics we'll discuss today will encompass how effectively each one of the academies is striving to achieve these goals. Some topics for today's hearing include the admission structure and the academies at each of the service academies and how our academies are reflecting the diversity of our country and preparing cadets, midshipmen, and I'll add dualies at the Air Force Academy for the myriad challenges that they face ahead. Some of the social issues each academy is dealing with, notably sexual assault, racism, diversity, character, and the way forward for that to continue to progress. Congress is here to support you in these efforts, but we also know that you've been dealing with something new, the impact of COVID-19 at each of the service academies and how has it impacted learning, operations, and the well-being of student body, faculty, and campus workforce. And then I'd like to have a robust discussion of maintenance, restoration, and resilience efforts for each of these campuses. West Point and the Naval Academy have buildings over 100 years old, And the Air Force Academy, its buildings are on average 60 years old. The military service campuses have not escaped the impacts of climate change, and we welcome each of the superintendents to share their concerns and their ideas to address these environmental calamities. We also look forward to hearing what more we can do as members of Congress to help the service academies in their nomination process. It's an honor and a privilege that we have the ability to make these nominations. Once again, I want to thank you for appearing before the committee today to discuss these issues. And now I want to recognize our distinguished ranking member, Mr. Calvert, for any comments he might want to add. Mr. Calvert?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair McCollum. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome the superintendents of our incredible service academies, Lieutenant General Clark, Lieutenant General Williams, Vice Admiral Buck. Thank you all for taking time to testify to us today. This subcommittee is responsible for ensuring our military has the tools it needs to protect our nation and carry out the national defense strategy. We hear from service chiefs and secretaries, combatant commanders, and other leaders in the Department of Defense about critical resourcing requirements and threats. We must never lose sight that these missions cannot be carried out without capable, intelligent, and prepared soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and now guardians. That is why today's hearing is so important. As our witnesses have noted in their respective testimonies, our academies continue to thrive and produce the world's finest leaders, but they also face a range of challenges that we must confront with a unified vision. COVID-19 has undoubtedly reshaped the way all our education is done in this country, as the chairman noted. This is no different from our service academies. I'm sure we'll discuss these impacts in great detail today. I'm aware how well the academies have adjusted their curriculums to educate students in a new learning environment. This was made possible by the incredible leaders before us today and their experience and professional staff. So first off, I'd like to thank each of you. I would like to commend the future leaders currently studying at our academies. Your commitment to our nation, especially during a time such as this, it does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. As we continue to fight against COVID-19, the academies are faced with challenges such as addressing aging infrastructure, increasing inclusion, diversity, and preparing our cadets and midshipmen for the wars of the future. I have great confidence in the leaders before us today and their students as we work together to take on these challenges. I look forward to hearing from them in more detail today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Well said. For everyone, your full written testimony that's being provided by our Service Academy superintendents will be placed in the record, and members have copies at their seats. So in the interest of time, I strongly encourage each of you to keep your summarized statement to 5 minutes or less to be complete, but succinct in answering questions because we will have votes. We do want to get to your questions. So we're going to go in this order, and as Vice Admiral Buck, you will come after Lieutenant General Williams, and then General Clark, you will close it up. So thank you for your testimony, and I'll defer my questions up to the end so I can go vote and we can keep this moving. So I would like at this time to ask Lieutenant General Williams to kick off the testimony, and then the rest of you follow in the order I mentioned. Thank you.
Chair McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the United States Military Academy, and thank you for your continued support to its programs. If you were at West Point today, you would see an academy thriving as it develops leaders of character despite the constraints of the global pandemic. The Academy's mission is to educate, train, and inspire the Corps of Cadets so that each graduate is a commissioned leader of character, committed to both Army values and the ideals of duty, honor, country, and prepared for a career of professional excellence and service to the nation as Army officers. Our vision is to be the nation's premier leader development institution. We do this through a process where cadets develop the academic, military, physical, and character foundation necessary for continued professional growth and service, while internalizing the values necessary to live honorably, lead honorably, and demonstrate excellence. Our faculty and staff model is deliberately focused on developing leaders of character, and we have an outstanding team of faculty, coaches, tactical officers, and non-commissioned officers, all hand-selected, a blend of soldier and civilian talent and expertise committed to our mission and to cadet excellence. We have operationalized our mission and strategy around 5 lines of effort that constitute my priorities. 1, developing leaders of character who are prepared to fight and win in the crucible of ground combat. 2, cultivating a culture of character growth necessary to build and sustain cohesive teams built on trust, dignity, and respect. 3, building diverse and effective winning teams by leveraging the talent of every member of the organization. 4, modernizing, sustaining, and securing our capabilities and infrastructure, and strengthening partnerships with academia, our alumni, the American people, and our international partners, while continuing to contribute to the Army profession. All 5 lines of effort ultimately support the Army's mission, enhance Army readiness, and are aligned with Army strategy and initiatives, including its people first mentality and winning matters attitude. Over the past year, we successfully continued our mission while adapting to the realities and overcoming the challenges of the COVID-19 environment. Challenges that have made our entire community stronger, more resilient, and cohesive. This was possible because of our deliberate, disciplined, and comprehensive approach throughout the pandemic that ensured the health and safety of the Corps and the West Point community at large. We quickly regained the critical human interactions that are essential to the success of our leader development experience after our remote education last spring. Reluctantly, over the past year, we had to contract our engagement with our alumni, parents, and the local community on post to protect the Corps and the community. We look forward to reestablishing connections as conditions allow. Over the past year, we sustained Army readiness by successfully graduating 1,000 new officers into the Army, executed our academic, military, physical, and character programs, and competed in intercollegiate athletics. Our cadets have excelled across the board, notably in our Graduate Scholars Program. To date, West Point proudly boasts 13 winners of prestigious graduate scholarships, to include 2 Rhodes Scholars. Additionally, we have several semifinalists in ongoing competitions, including 18 semifinalists for the Fulbright Scholarship. In fact, the Fulbright Commission has recognized us as the top producing institution for the 2021 academic year. These inspiring young men and women are motivated and demonstrating excellence every day. I'm so proud to be their soup, and you can be proud of them as well. Character development is the most important thing we do at West Point, because ultimately, character development is critical to building Army readiness. We meet cadets where they are and immerse them in a culture of character growth. This means that character development is ongoing throughout West Point, in the classroom, during military training, on the athletic fields, and in the locker rooms and barracks. Character development is deliberately woven into every aspect of the cadet experience to ensure we develop them into leaders of our Army and our nation require. Trained, disciplined, and fit officers who lead by example, create cohesive teams built on trust, dignity, and respect, and who take care of our Army's greatest strength, its people. Over the last 2 years, we mobilized Academy resources to better integrate our character development efforts throughout all aspects of cadet leader development. We created the Character Integration Advisory Group, which elevates character development resources to my level of command for additional emphasis and synchronization across all programs. Additionally, aligned with the Army, we continue our efforts toward eliminating the corrosive behaviors that undermine trust, such as sexual assault and harassment, racism, and extremism. We're making progress in this space, but recognize we still have a long way to go. In closing, I remain confident we are preparing our cadets well to lead in the 21st century Army, while cultivating the culture that puts people first, so that they're ready to build and lead cohesive teams teams made up of the sons and daughters entrusted to our Army. I thank you again for the opportunity to discuss the state of our Academy with you today. I look forward to your questions.
Chairwoman McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of the United States Naval Academy. Our mission is to develop midshipmen morally, mentally, and physically, and to imbue them with the highest ideals of duty, honor, and loyalty. I'm pleased to report to you today that the Naval Academy is succeeding in its mission. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented incredible obstacles to achieving that mission over the last 12 months. We had to rapidly adapt our organization to meet the threat of COVID and continue to execute our mission safely and effectively. However, despite these challenges and obstacles, our faculty, staff, and coaches, and most importantly, our brigade of midshipmen have endured, often creating their own success. This past year, we successfully graduated and commissioned 1,002 members of the class of 2020 into the fleet, and they're now serving as ensigns and second lieutenants in our Navy and our Marine Corps. We also brought aboard the class of 2024 for an in-person plebe summer experience. We are proud of the resilience and dedication displayed by our newest Naval Academy class, who were inducted in the midst of a pandemic. It is our firm belief at the Naval Academy that you cannot develop leaders online. This is why we made it a priority and a mandate to return the entire brigade to Annapolis this past fall for the 2020-2021 academic year. In order to do this, the Naval Academy reimagined how our most basic operations are conducted in order to keep the entire brigade, as well as our faculty, staff, and coaches, safe on the yard. This ran the gamut and included hybrid, socially distanced learning, instituting a robust COVID-19 surveillance testing protocol, dedicating one of our 8 dormitory wings for quarantine and isolation, and shifting our meals to a non-communal grab-and-go format. Because of our adherence to public health guidelines across our entire Naval Academy community, our COVID-19 positivity rates have remained very low throughout the majority of the school year, well below those of our surrounding community. While we have seen an uptick in the number of cases within the brigade during this past week, we are confident that we will be able to reduce our numbers using the same strict mitigation protocols employed by our Navy's fleet units to contain the spread of COVID-19. We recently began the process of vaccinating volunteers from our faculty and staff and hope to start our midshipman vaccination process soon, an imperative if we are to execute fleet training this coming summer. We're looking forward to when the COVID vaccine allows us to regain a greater sense of normalcy here in Annapolis. In the meantime, we will continue to prioritize our midshipmen's physical and mental well-being during this difficult period. In addition to the challenges posed by COVID-19, the Naval Academy has not lost focus on our long-term and ongoing priority of developing leaders of character. The racial justice movement in America that rose this past summer impacted many members of our Naval Academy community, and the associated events have provoked important conversations regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion on our campus. The Naval Academy must be a visible cornerstone of a value-based naval culture of dignity and mutual respect, and that includes improving sexual assault prevention efforts and continuing to strengthen response support for victims. There is continued work to be done at the Naval Academy so that we can attract, retain, and develop a diverse cadre of future Navy and Marine Corps officers who are resilient, innovative, and equipped to lead in a highly diverse, socially complex, and multi-generational workforce. Lastly, we remain vigilant of the long-term existential threat that climate change and sea level rise pose to our continued operations here in Annapolis. We have studied the science, we've implemented several resiliency projects, and we're in the process of formulating a military installation resiliency plan that is due to be complete at the end of this calendar year. For 175 years, The Naval Academy has met its mission for our nation. However, we still face many challenges ahead. I believe that our top-notch team of senior leaders, faculty, and staff are prepared to meet those challenges using the same ingenuity, flexibility, and adaptability that has allowed us to continue our mission in the face of a global pandemic. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for your enduring support of all of our service academies. I'm prepared to answer your questions as they're posed. Thank you very much.
Chairwoman McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, and other distinguished members of the committee, good morning from the United States Air Force Academy, and thank you to my fellow superintendents for your statements. I'm grateful for this opportunity to update you on some of our recent successes and to share some of the obstacles we face in the coming years. Thank you for all that you do to support our cadets and to enable the mission success of not only our academy, but our Air and Space Forces as well. The interest and support of this committee is greatly appreciated, and I look forward to our discussion today. About 5 months ago, it was my great honor to take command of the institution I am proud to call my alma mater. Nearly 4 decades ago, as a cadet at the United States Air Force Academy myself, I found my purpose and established a foundation of character and service that I could not have built anywhere else. I've returned to superintendent to Academy on an outstanding trajectory, but also one facing great challenges, some unique to our mission and others that we share with other campuses, our fellow service academies, and communities across our country. In these initial months, I laid out priorities that seek to recognize and overcome not only the challenges we face at our academy, but also those that our graduates will soon encounter as decision makers in an era of great power competition and rapid change. My first priority is one that is fundamental and unwavering, even as the world changes around us. We will continue to develop leaders of character. Character is the cornerstone of leadership and should be the hallmark of an academy graduate. Each element of our mission must remain aligned with the moral compass that character provides. Without a commitment to character, the leadership foundation we build here will not be strong enough to support the weight of our goals and ambitions. My second priority is our immediate tactical challenge and one of the toughest our academy has ever faced. We must defeat COVID-19. I'm proud that our response to this crisis is utilizing the amazing brainpower we have within our faculty, our staff, and our cadets. Trusting the science, putting our math skills to work, and strict adherence to guidelines will be our continued approach. And the health and safety of our entire community will remain at the center of our decision-making process. Some of us may be done with COVID-19, but COVID-19 is not done with us. Third, we must prepare leaders who will fight and win in future conflicts. These conflicts will look different than any of those experienced by any of us today. We're in an era where our freedom to operate in the air and space cannot be taken for granted. As our Air Force Chief of Staff, General Charles Brown, stated, we must accelerate change or lose. Our academy will do just that, developing innovative, creative, and bold thinkers and leaders prepared to solve the unknown problems of tomorrow. Finally, we must foster a culture of dignity and respect. This will not only make our campus a better place to work, live, and learn, but it also is a strategic imperative for our Air Force and our Space Force. The cadets on our campus form the most diverse classes we've ever had at our academy, and they will lead increasingly diverse airmen and guardians. They must enable and empower the diversity of thought that can be derived from this uniquely American strength. They must also be able to relate to and thrive in partnerships with other cultures and allied nations in increasingly collaborative combat operations. If dignity and respect is not ingrained in our culture, we will not only fail in these collective efforts, but we will also fail in the proper development of future leaders. In the longer statement submitted for the record, I've elaborated in greater detail on some of the programs initiatives, and actions that we have taken or will take to implement these priorities. I'm proud of our direction and am fully confident in the skills and abilities of our cadets, faculty, and staff, but there are areas where we still have work to do to uphold the high standards that our society rightfully expects of us. Our 4,221 cadets, 206 preparatory school cadet candidates, and the infrastructure that makes up our campus represent a critical investment in the future of our national security. I welcome the opportunity to discuss how we can ensure our mission success together. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. For the first question, as I said, I had the opportunity of speaking to the three of you over the past several days, so I'm going to reserve my question for the end, and I'm going to turn to Mr. Rupersberg first for a question.
Unmute me. Yep. Okay.
We can hear you.
Unmuted? You there?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, first thing I want to thank all three for the job that you do in preparing, our former leaders of the military. An excellent job. I want to thank you, Chairwoman McCollum, Ranking Member Calvert, for your leadership. And my first question is going to be about climate change related. You mentioned that in your remarks, Admiral Buck. And I want to speak to the broader context of an infrastructure budget. Now, I'm president of the Naval Academy Board of Visitors, and we speak often about many of the challenges that we have there. But I'm particularly concerned with the issue of sea level rise. I know that both Air Force and West Point don't have that issue and have plenty of land there. Well, the Naval Academy is surrounded by water, and it's getting worse and worse. Now, Admiral Buck, can you explain to us the magnitude of this issue for the record, and what steps that you're taking to address these concerns, what your needs are? And you might want to discuss also the new building, one of the first new buildings that was built in the Naval Academy in many years, the cybersecurity building, and how that was designed and to protect what the interior of the building and the equipment in the building, but how that can repel or save the building from the sea level rise that occurs on a regular basis. Admiral Buck.
Congressman Rupersberger, thank you very much for the questions. Great to see you at least two-dimensionally and hopefully three-dimensionally sooner than later. With regards to the series of questions you asked, all related to climate change, you have identified our greatest vulnerability is it's our geographic location. We're built on a lot of reclaimed land. We're at the confluence of one of Maryland's major rivers in the Chesapeake Bay, large bodies of water. And we're also affected throughout the entire day, 365 days of the year, by the prevailing winds that have existed for centuries, easterly and southeasterly winds, which, when you combine that weather with sea level rise, with subsidence that is pretty significant in the Chesapeake Bay area here on the East Coast and in the Mid-Atlantic, we are continually experiencing the negative effects of high tide flooding, almost on a regular basis. To touch on the one question you asked about the magnitude of it, for an example, to kind of give a compelling statistic, in the entire decade of the 90s, the Naval Academy was negatively affected by high tide flooding 41 times in a decade. Now we're experiencing 41 instances of high tide flooding per year. And as we look at all of the projections from all of the science and those that are looking at this, especially on the East Coast and looking at it for naval infrastructure, it is projected by 2050 that we'll see this high tide flooding negative effect every single day of the year. What does that mean? It floods out some of our roads, some of the key networks that we bring our workforce on the campus day in and day out. It affects some of our parking lots where they try to park, and it affects the entrances and exits to some of our buildings. So it is a reality. And I'm very proud to tell you that my predecessor formed the U.S. Naval Academy Sea Level Rise Advisory Council in 2015. And I have the pleasure, the honor, and the imperative to carry on the work of that advisory council. It's made up of scientists from the Naval Academy, engineers, different stakeholders in my Naval Academy team, as well as stakeholders from the city of Annapolis and the state of Maryland. It's informed by the Army Corps of Engineers and other experts that we bring in to get after a study that they've embarked on now that we intend to see or expect to see at the end of this calendar year that will help us create a military installation resiliency plan. They're going to present to us different courses of action, engineering solutions that we can take around the yard. They might be building up cement seawalls higher and better. It might be creating earthen berms or levees and raising the level of roads to block different areas. And it may be in combination with correcting some of our stormwater drainage systems that maybe has not had a good look and a modernization in a number of years. We understand that as we combine all of those recommended engineering solutions and understand and appreciate their associated costs, that we can present to you, to members of Congress, and to my Navy for help, that if we do that very deliberately over the next 30 years, very consistently, deliberately, and with conviction, we can ensure that we not only protect the infrastructure at the Naval Academy, but also with our host city, the historic city of Annapolis.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I yield back. My time is up. Thank you for those answers.
It's a great question, and we will be following up on it. And I think we need a different, in my opinion, a different time frame that's a little quicker than 30 years, because that's the best case scenario, I think, that we heard from that. Mr. Calvert.
Everyone will say that.
Thank you, and I thank the superintendents for their testimony. It's been pointed out, we're currently in the age of rapidly evolving technology, unseen in human history, impacting warfare domains in almost every single way imaginable. Of course, Dutch has an installation that's in his district that's involved in that every single day. I mean, cyber is a huge issue that we have to face every single day, and now space domains. Can each of you give us examples of how respective institutions are preparing our future leaders to adapt to this type of environment? Are you making curriculum changes that focus more heavily on that technology? I guess that's for all three, or one of you representing each other.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. I'll start off, General Williams here at West Point. Sir, as we talked yesterday, thank you for that question. We absolutely are here at West Point thinking about the future in very critical ways. I would start with, and thanks to Congress, our Cyber Engineering and Academic Center, which will transform how we think about the future in very real ways. And it'll also allow us to continue to attract the best and brightest from our country. We just broke ground about 2 months ago, and thanks to Congress, we have the ability to do that. So we look forward to having the space to develop and provide a forum where not only will our cadets will be able to interact with the best and brightest around the world and invite folks to continue that discussion, but also their daily conversation will be influenced and shaped by this great facility. And so in terms of how we do our curriculum in terms of the academy, we have new majors. We have a space science major and a space science minor just recently that's under the direction of our physics and nuclear engineering department. They've made a lot of great inroads with that, have been there for some time. Currently, we have 70 cadets enrolled in the major, 20 cadets enrolled in the minor. We also have a geospatial information science major where we have 85 cadets currently enrolled. So we are producing the young men and women who will be leaders in this space, if you will, in the future. And we feel very comfortable about that. We also have, we also enjoy the Army's Cyber Institute, which is co-located here. It's the Army's think tank to how we think about it. And that really is a nexus where we bring the best and brightest, and they routinely provide to the literature about what we should be thinking about to compete and defeat our adversaries in the future in the cyber domain. So those are some of the things internal to West Point, the brick and mortar projects which you all have helped fund, and then more importantly, the adjunct Army Cyber Institute just outside the gate. And cadets are allowed to interface with the Army Cyber Institute. So folks come in and out of that in their classroom, and the instructors actually rotate on my staff as well. Thank you for your question, sir.
Thank you. Navy, Air Force, any addition to that?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. And what I'll start with is our national defense strategy that tells us as a country that we have to be prepared to compete in an environment of great power competition. And our Chief of Staff, General Brown, has charged us in his order to accelerate change or lose, to develop airmen that are prepared to compete in that environment. So at the Academy, much like West Point and Annapolis, we are developing leaders that are looking to the future. And that is one of my top priorities. We have 50% of our majors are STEM majors. 50% of our core courses are STEM courses. But beyond that, we're also developing leaders to think boldly, to be innovative and solve problems that we don't even know about. And we've recently stood up an Institute for Future Conflict to help us to meet the needs and to prepare our cadets so that they're not ready to meet challenge for 5 years from now, but challenges 25 years from now. And we're very excited about the direction that we're taking and that we're moving. In fact, we've just hired a new director of that institute. So I think we are in a great place to have our leaders ready to lead us into the future and compete well on the future stage of our global environment. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you. It looks like my time is just about up, Madam Chair, so I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Well, that's good. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to catch up on the last service we didn't hear from. Ms. Capter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for hosting us this morning with these really outstanding leaders for our country, all the superintendents. My two questions involve diversity and culture at the academies. The first is, could each of our guests please summarize their progress in terms of diversity, which has been one of the most challenging aspects of my work as a congresswoman relative to the academies. Despite the diverse district I represent, getting young people to apply who would be more representative of the district that I represent, and believe me, it isn't for lack of trying. It has been very, very hard. So just talk to us about in each of the academies, your progress in terms of recruitment for admission. And then secondly, in terms of culture, I was very interested in Superintendent Williams' use of the word character, developing character. I'm interested in your views at the Academy of the types of students that are being admitted and some of your challenges there. I'm familiar with some of the drug problems that have occurred at West Point, but it's not the only place where those have happened. And I'm interested in your talking about the cheating that has occurred on many of the tests in each of the academies, and how, in fact, you can educate to character. Do your admissions not possess those traits? Do you have to teach to that? Has this changed in the last 40 years? I'm very interested in your comments on diversity and on developing cadets with character.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. Diversity is, as I mentioned in my opening comments, is a line of effort. It's a priority. I think it's very important for young men and women that come here that we look like the United States Army. We represent the country. I actively am in this space. We have a very active outreach program. I would love to reach out and help you in that effort, ma'am, as we go forward. I actively, in this virtual space, it's a little difficult, but we hold a number of online webinars. I usually participate them on Saturday, and I actually talk and recruit people of different diversity. Man, we meet or exceed all of the officer percentages here at West Point in terms of what we need. So if you have For African American, for Asians and Hispanics, we are at or over the percentage that are actively represented in the active duty Army Officer Corps right now at West Point. 24% women, 17% African American, and I can share with you more of those details later. So diversity is something that I think is critical to winning, and especially as we look at complex problems in the future, you have to have folks that are of diverse backgrounds and ethnicities, I think. In terms of culture, I mentioned before how we've elevated culture. It's a very deliberate effort. We have a highly qualified individual who integrates across the enterprise, not only in the academic departments, but in my physical department and in my military department, who answers to me about culture. And we have 9 highly qualified. The Army allowed us to have these folks to come in here, and they are a part of our program. And it's a very deliberate way to take young men and women who right now, there's a set of high school seniors who will be here in about 4 months. And we take them where they are, and over the 47-month experience, we develop them to leaders of character. So it's a very deliberate effort. I can talk to you more about that in more detail. And then finally, Pam, you asked about honor. Last spring, our young men and women were in a remote learning environment, and were challenged. Some were challenged in terms of home life at home, and a variety of issues, which I can go in more detail later if you would like. They were away from their coaches, their teachers, their TAC NCOs, and the structures that provide the way ahead. And from my perspective, these young men and women have only been here a semester, and there's no excuse for violating United States Military Academy Honor Code. And I have all the tools I need to hold them accountable for that, and we will. And the ones that remain here, we will develop them into leaders of character, and they will learn from this experience. Thank you, ma'am.
General, what about drug use at West Point?
Ma'am, I haven't seen that we have some small instances. It's not raging right now, to use that word. There are the normal kinds of challenges that any commander faces. This is not something that's very high currently raging at West Point in terms of.
Have you expelled anyone because of drug use?
I have not this year, but in my past 3 years, yes, ma'am, I have.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I on air?
I can hear you, sir.
Thank the gentlemen for their appearance before our subcommittee and for the great job you're doing in your respective academies. Let me ask you about something that's unpleasant. One aspect, big aspect of the COVID-19 problem, and that is the mental well-being of our world in these times, but especially, of course, at the academies with your personnel, the mental health. In the spring of 2020, as COVID-19 forced the academies to change how they operated, locking down campus, quarantining cadets and midshipmen, moving classes online, and ultimately sending the student body home early for the school year. While the cadets and midshipmen at West Point and the Naval Academy were sent home in March, the Air Force Academy kept senior cadets on campus. And in March, 2 Air Force Academy seniors were found dead and suspected suicides while under strict lockdown because of COVID-19. That led, of course, to conversations about the impact of the pandemic on mental health. Both West Point and the Naval Academy reported seeing indicators of mental health decline in the cadets and midshipmen throughout the coronavirus pandemic. How are the academies dealing with this obvious problem? Following COVID-19 safety protocols, as well as keeping your campuses safe and the well-being of cadets and midshipmen in good shape.
Congressman Rogers, Admiral Buck here from Annapolis. I'll take the lead on answering that from our perspective here at the Academy. Looking back chronologically, when we did shift very rapidly to an online environment back in the spring semester of 2020, I'm very proud to tell you that our team here, our collective team of people that can help midshipmen develop their resiliency and respond to them in their times of need, quickly converted every single service that we have to an online environment. And I don't believe we missed a beat with regards to making ourselves available to each and every midshipman. And it's a large cohort of folks. It's their shipmates, their fellow midshipmen. It's their company leadership or the commissioned officers and enlisted leaders in the brigade that usually see them on a damn near an hour by hour basis each day. It's our chaplain corps. It's our Midshipman Development Center, which is staffed by psychiatrists, psychologists, nutritionists, social workers, and sexual assault folks that can help. All of those people were able to immediately make themselves avail to the midshipmen during that distance environment in the spring and the summer. What we saw was a rise in a request for services, not a rise at all for specific appointments for therapists. And that should be noted. It was a significant difference in their request to try to learn to cope with them for themselves, to cope amongst their family environment or wherever they were operating from to take school online. But as I said at my opening statement, it's an imperative to bring these young men and women back and develop them and care for them in person. And we began that right near the end of June with plebe summer, with some summer school, with a bit of our summer training, and then the fall semester. And that allowed all of those stakeholders to once again reach out and help midshipmen in person. It's a very robust network. And I also have differentiated to myself and to my senior leadership team. It's one thing to talk about mental health. It's another thing to talk about morale. And there's a very big difference there. We take their mental health of our midshipmen and even our faculty and our staff, our whole Naval Academy family, we take that very seriously and try to look out for one another and address it when we can. It's incumbent upon my commandant of midshipmen and myself and other senior leaders to also work to improve morale when we have to impose certain things like the lockdown to the campus, when we have spikes of COVID, to try to mitigate it, knock it down. And we've seen success in addressing both a morale issue as well as a mental health issue, sir.
There is a huge stigma with human beings in general, but speaking now of military personnel, a huge stigma about asking for mental health help. How are you able to overcome that problem?
He's out of time.
Sir, I'm in my past as a flag officer in the Navy, I was given an assignment to lead the 21st Century Sailor Office, which looked at all of destructive behaviors of Navy sailors. And one of those was I was the suicide prevention officer for the United States Navy. And I'm proud to tell you that what we realized was we needed to work diligently to reduce that stigma and to instead advertise to Navy sailors, to all of us, that it's okay to ask for help. In fact, the way we branded that was it's a sign of strength to ask for help. And what we're seeing is over 50% of the battle is just to be able to have an ability to talk to somebody, to get some of your problems and your demons off your chest by talking to someone. So learning to be a good active listener, making yourself available, and ensuring that everyone realizes that the minute you ask for help with a mental health issue, you're not going to be thrown out of the Naval Academy or you're not going to be tossed out of the Navy. We've made such a big investment in you. We see such great potential in you that we'd like to help you through your demons and help you through what's stressing you, and then get you back up on that horse that threw you off and make you a productive midshipman, and then hence a productive naval officer out in the fleet.
Thank you so much for that thoughtful question, Mr. Rogers. We went a little over, but it was well worth hearing. And mental health is something in our military we know we want to cut down on people feeling that they can't ask. So thank you. And I'm sure the committee members appreciated the fact that we took an extra minute to get that answer. Thank you very much. Mr. Cuellar.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I wanted to go on the question of diversity that I believe Representative Marcy Kaptur brought up. Can you tell us a little bit about prep schools and how y'all use prep schools to get diversity into your academies? I know there's some prep schools in different parts of the country, but there are areas that there's really no prep schools at all, and they have to travel a long way to get some of those students to get the diversity. Could y'all tell us what y'all do and how y'all set up some of those prep schools, or is it all private sector involved, or are there partnerships with the academies?
Sir, this is Lieutenant General Clark from the Air Force Academy, and I can address that. Our prep school is significant in helping us to shape the diversity and the makeup of our cadet population as they come in. And they are on campus. It's about 200 prep school cadet candidates that are there. But we also have opportunities at other prep schools, as you mentioned, throughout the country where we can garner cadet candidates from to bring into the academy. And we have an organization called our Falcon Foundation, which is comprised of a lot of graduates and volunteers who help us to shepherd people into those other prep schools so that we can have the opportunity to reach from all districts of our country to bring them into the academy, help them to achieve if there's any shortfalls in their admissions or any issues that they need to deal with to make them more competitive for the Air Force Academy. We bring them into those schools, and they really do help us to shape not only from an ethnic and racial, but gender. And our Falcon Foundation is that organization that I talked about that helps us to do that. They really meet any needs that we have. So if we see shortfalls in the makeup of our cadet population, they're very responsive to us and help us to shape it to make our class everything we want it to be. And frankly, it's working. Our current class of 2024, our freshmen, is the most diverse class we've ever had at the Air Force Academy. So we continue to lean on external partners to help us to shape our class. Over.
Sir, I'll take a shot at it as well. Much like Rich, we depend on the prep school use maps. It's up the hill. My son went to the prep school before he came here. It's a vital part of how we build diversity here at the United States Military Academy. The purpose, like Rich, we have about 225 places up there every year. As you know, sir, you apply to West Point, and if you're lacking in some of the skills that you need to succeed down the hill, as we call it here, that's a perfect year for you to do better. And we do use it as well to get at diversity, not only as Rich mentioned, but also from soldiers from the regular Army. We have about 40 of that 225 soldiers from the regular Army. And a lot of things that were talked about earlier, they bring a maturity to some of the things that were talked about earlier, sexual assault, sexual harassment, because they have real life experience and they are mentors down in the Corps in that next year. So I would add another sort of layer to that. I don't know if my Navy shipmate has anything to add.
Very similar to my sister academies, our magnitude, about 250 young men and women matriculate to the academy through the Naval Academy Prep School. Ours is not co-located with Annapolis, it's up in Newport, Rhode Island. And we also affiliate with 17 private prep schools around the country. We call them foundation schools. So on any given year, sir, 300 midshipmen will have furthered their academic skills and allow us to garner greater diversity in the brigade by coming through either our prep school or our foundation program. And the purpose of that is exactly as my two colleagues have described to you.
All right. Let me, before my time's over, I got about 30 seconds. First of all, thank you. And I'm really happy that we work well, just like the other members with your academy. So I want to thank you for diversifying the academies. Could I ask each of y'all to provide, I don't know if anybody else wants copies of this, but I like to be provided by all three of y'all, your work with prep schools, the different schools you have, and the foundation, the Falcon Foundation and all that. Y'all can send that over to me because there are areas, by time's over, but let me just say this. There's areas along the border, highly Hispanic areas, Laredo, for example, is 96% Hispanic, and I'm sure some other folks have very high minority areas, and love to see if we can partner up with y'all on some of those prep schools on that. So if y'all can send that over, I really would appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that would be fabulous. I think the whole committee would like that. And I also know there's some high school programs too. So that would be wonderful if you would share that. Thank you for asking that question. It was a great question. Mr. Womack, who took me to West Point, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the hearing. Thanks to the SUPs for what you're doing and for being with us today. Henry, you would be pleased to know, and they've spoken to this, these prep schools are wonderful opportunities. I kind of call them red shirt years because they do some things that really prepare a lot of these young men and women for the opportunity without just throwing them in as direct admits and putting them in a very difficult situation. So I think from a diversity standpoint, these prep schools are great. Also, and I don't know, General Williams, I don't know what we call it, but there's also the ability to send some of these kids out to other schools like Marion Military Academy, those kinds of places for a freshman year, and then recompete for a direct admit the following year, kind of like prep school, but in a different setting. So
Done that too.
they're wonderful. As a matter of disclosure, I chair the board of the Board of Visitors at West Point, so I own that, and that forms the basis for some of my understanding of what goes on at these academies, particularly up there on the Hudson. And I want everybody on the call to know, on the Zoom today, to know that the current holder of the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy are the Black Knights of the United States Military Academy at West Point. Can I get a hua on that, General Williams?
Congressman, yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to go back to the issue that was brought up earlier regarding the cheating scandals, and I'm going to give each one of the SUPs about a minute to fashion an answer. And Chair McCollum, we may go over just a little bit. It's one thing to have an attrition model where you make a mistake, you're out of here. It's a whole nother thing to have a developmental model where we take young men and women from society, bring them in as freshmen, and then begin the grooming process. Man, if all these kids were ready to be lieutenants, we wouldn't spend 4 years trying to groom them. So I'm a big believer that when they come in, if they skin their knee, they make some mistakes, that we work with them. So tell me, and I'm going to start with General Clark, tell me what you have at your disposal, what you do to help kids, because all the academies have had, a bout with a cheating scandal, many thanks to COVID. But tell me what you do in terms of bringing these kids through an honor program and reacquainting them with the values that we espouse at the academy.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. And I know that I can speak for my fellow superintendents that we are all approaching a developmental model of honor rather than a fear-based or a punitive model. Now, there is obviously punitive elements to our honor systems, but like you said, we have to bring our cadets, when we bring them in, it's a matter of developing them to that honorable living capacity or desire that we have. So we have a very robust honor education system that starts from the day that they walk into the academy. And it consists of instructional opportunities, different mentorship opportunities, and it goes all the way throughout their time as cadets. Now, if they are found in violation of the honor code, especially in the early years, we have a strong probationary program that we help them to develop, help them to recognize where their shortfalls were, and to bring them to a place where they understand how to continue to live honorably and abide by our code. We've had a 95% success rate, meaning cadets who get into that probationary status, they never have another incident or issue with the honor code. So we're very proud of it. The developmental aspects are key and critical, and we want our cadets to respect, not fear, the honor code. Over,
Admiral
sir.
Buck.
Likewise, sir, we have an honor concept at the Naval Academy. I will address that we sensed that we had a cheating issue on a final exam that was administered just this last December, a couple months ago. I'm right near the end of concluding the investigation of that to better understand the magnitude and appreciate exactly what happened. It was with a younger cohort of midshipmen, the sophomores, with the physics exam. Like my colleagues, we completely embrace the developmental model. I would suggest that you probably get a little bit more understanding when you're a freshman or a sophomore, but as you spend more time in your 47-month journey at the Naval Academy, immersed on a daily basis in a culture of character and a culture of honor, that our expectations of you as you get closer to entering the fleet as a junior and a senior, that there may not be as much of a look for remediation and second chances. But we do want to look at each case individually. If you're found or alleged to have violated our honor concept, your case goes in front of a midshipman-led honor committee. They, midshipmen, your peers, make a determination of your guilt or your innocence. And if it comes out that you're guilty, you then go into consideration by the commissioned chain of command, whether you're chosen for remediation and retained, or whether you're recommended to be separated from the academy. We share almost the exact same statistic as Air Force. We have a 95% success rate of those that enter the honor system for a violation once in their time here. They don't ever enter it again, and they matriculate very well. And by the time we release them to the fleet, we're confident that we have some honorable young leaders, and you've heard us say, leaders of character.
Yeah, well, look, thank you,
30
Admiral.
seconds.
Okay, and I'm gonna, I never want to speak for the superintendent at West Point because he speaks well for himself, but I'll save the time on this one. Let me just say this for the benefit of my colleagues. You will hear from time to time from graduates of these academies. We call them old grads for the most part, and many times the opinions of the old grads are more based on attrition models than they are developmental models because they've been through it, and you know, so I think we have to be very careful, Madam Chairwoman, to be terribly judgmental, particularly when these kids come to these academies as freshmen, and particularly when they come from some less than ideal circumstances. And that's why I congratulate each of the superintendents for what they're doing regarding this developmental model. And I'll yield back my time.
Thank you. Mr. Adderholt. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Kirkpatrick. Mr. Adderholt, you're after Ms. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ann, please go ahead. My mistake.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Calvert. I have a question about sexual harassment. So when I look through many of the programs built to combat sexual harassment and assault, a lot of them focus on service provided to victims after they suffer abuse. I agree it's absolutely critical that we provide every possible resource to survivors, but I do believe that we are overlooking opportunities in prevention. Lieutenant General Williams, you discussed the lack of relationship and interpersonal skills that have been in some young cadets which can enable corrosive behaviors to take root. So can you share with us how the academies are prioritizing training focused on developing healthy relationships to prevent sexual assault and harassment? And if you are looking outside of these internal created programs to civilian entities that specialize in developing these skills in today's young adults. And that's for everybody on the panel.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your question. I will tell you that leadership matters in this space, and my secretary, the Chief of Staff of the Army, the Sergeant Major of the Army have been very clear in terms of how do we get at this. When we brought our cadets back from winter leave in January, I took a look at the Fort Hood Independent Review, which I know many of the members all members probably are aware of. And we talked to every single cadet when they came back from the leave. I led off the session, and then I had my experts, my SHARP director and others talk. And I said, this isn't about Fort Hood. This could be any fort. This could be Fort West Point. And we talked to them about personal courage and what it takes to hold each other accountable as peers here at the United States Military Academy. So I think leadership matters. I know it matters. And I know that all of the corrosives that the chief talks about and the secretary and the SMA, and that we also take on here, the only way to combat that, ma'am, is for peer leadership and for leadership at the very top. I will also tell you, we piloted last summer a relational character course. We're going to expand it this summer to talk exactly what you mentioned in there. How do we relate with each other? When the cadets came back last summer, we allowed, our cadets were brilliant in this space. We have trust and peer leaders in the cadet companies, and they're the ones that they are resources for young men and women to talk to. So we allowed our cadets last summer. We will do the same thing with the new classes that come in, a time, the space to talk about tough subjects. It really is about these young men and women looking each other in the eye. I know it's difficult during these COVID experiences here, but looking each other in the eye and saying, look, I care about you, and I expect you to treat me with dignity and respect. And so that's what we do here at West Point. We provide them the opportunity and the space to talk about it, but I am in this space, and I'm not leaving this space as a superintendent of the United States Military Academy. Thank you, ma'am.
Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, Sean Buck from Navy. Just very like what General Williams just said, the number one way for us to get after preventing sexual assault or sexual harassment is through peer leadership. What we have found over and over again in the formal surveys that are given at the Naval Academy and all of our academies are that our midshipmen and our cadets, they trust the commissioned leadership at the academies, they trust the senior enlisted leaders, but they're having a difficult time trusting their peer leadership. Most of the sexual assaults over time at my academy have been midshipmen on midshipmen, and that's very distressing that it's blue on blue. So in our prevention efforts, which is now the preponderance of the effort in the military, across all the services and across all three of our academies, is getting after prevention and strengthening the confidence and the ability of our midshipmen leaders to lead themselves with adult supervision. That's where we're going to nip it in the bud. You did ask one particular question, if any of us are leaning on external resources and innovation and creativity from maybe other university systems around the country or any other asset that might be helping organizations get after sexual assault. And yes, ma'am, we are. There's a very robust investment by the Department of Defense and all of our services to allow us to do best practices wherever they may be to get after this scourge and make it go away from our academies, ma'am.
And ma'am, I don't know if, this is General Clark. I don't know if, I know our time is up. If you'd like me to make a short statement.
Yes, if you could, please.
Yes, take 30 seconds.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just say that we are in the same mode of thinking as both Navy and West Point. And we look at a sexual assault prevention framework where we can actually address this issue with our cadets, both pre-admission through programs that we have them involved in. We work with parents on alcohol-related issues so that parents can work with their young high school graduates before they come. We work during their time here throughout. We have great programs that address healthy relationship training, that address personal skills, and that also address bystander intervention skills for our whole cadet wing so that nobody stands by just to let these horrible events happen. And we also have a series of pilot programs that allow us to assess each program that we implement so that we understand exactly the type of effect we could expect, but also to use our time wisely so that we can target exactly the problems that we have to address in this space. So I think all of us are committed to decreasing and in fact defeating this scourge and making our academies and our forces better. Over.
Thank you so much. I am going to do a bit of housekeeping before we hear from Mr. Adderholt's question. Mr. Ryan, you're present. I'm going to go and vote. The staff will send you the list of the next speakers. It's Adderholt, Aguilar, Carter, and then the rest are listed. I know we're in good hands, and with that, I will be going to vote. Thank you, sir. Mr. Adderholt.
No, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks everyone for being before the subcommittee today. I have been in contact with my colleague, Congressman Darryl A of Tennessee, and one of the issues that has come up is just wondering if you could provide a little bit of a timeline about the COVID-19 vaccines that'll be available for the Academy members. I know a couple of you may have mentioned that a little bit in your comments earlier on, but as far as a timeline, it's when you foresee the members being able to actually receive the shots, or if they have started receiving the shots. Could you please just give us a brief outline as far as what you're looking at right now at your particular academy?
Yes, sir. This is Lieutenant General Clark. I can start with that one. All of us, all three of us, General Buck, General Williams, we talk regularly about our issues with COVID-19. And I believe that we are all in very similar situations as far as the impacts of it on our mission, how we're testing, and then now vaccines, which have come our way. We are all adhering to the DoD schema, the Department of Defense schema that lays out the priorities of who should get the vaccines when. So it starts off with first responders, it cascades down to mission essential members and deployers, it gets into medical beneficiaries, and then our cadets actually fall into the lowest category because they're all healthy others. They are the most healthy of our population, and they fall into the lower level of that schema. So we all get vaccines that are filtered to us. We get them periodically, as is the rest of the installations in at least the Air Force and the Space Force, and I think the Army and Navy are the same. We fall into a system that when they come, we execute the vaccines and get them into arms as quickly as possible, but in accordance with the schema that the Department of Defense has given us. So right now for us at the Air Force Academy, it's primarily our first responders, our staff and faculty who we consider mission essential, who have been the folks that have gotten the vaccine so far. Eventually though, as we get more vaccines into arms, our cadets will be recipients of that vaccine. And I'll yield the floor to my other superintendent colleagues. Over.
Congressman, we're getting fantastic support from the Army and DoD in this space. To date, we have vaccinated just over 4,000 here at West Point. That is not the Corps of Cadets. That's much as Rich laid out the framework, our first responders and such, and folks that are in vulnerable populations. I have 4,400 cadets here, but in the community writ large at West Point, about 8,000 in the community and such. So we are on path. Rich laid it out in terms of when it's available, we'll do it. As you know, we're under emergency use, so we cannot mandate. But sir, we've got very high, the cadets want this vaccination. It's well over 90% that are going to. So when we get it, when it's available, I'm confident that we will be vaccinated here at the United States Military Academy and contribute to Army readiness as we go forward.
Thank you.
And Congressman Adderholt, what I've done is I have the same schema. It's a DoD schema. It's going well. I would suggest it's slow and steady. We went after the same prioritization as General Clark articulated to you. I've given my Navy a timeline for when I need to have the midshipmen vaccinated, because the way we do our summer training is I will send the vast majority of midshipmen out to the fleet to embark on operational ships, submarines, squadrons, Navy SEAL teams, and our Navy has prioritized the operational forces first. They're getting vaccinated. They have a very safe and healthy bubble. And for them to be willing to accept our midshipmen from the Academy, as well as midshipmen from NROTC universities around the country, we need to vaccinate them prior to the summer training started. So we're anticipating our summer training, it first opens up around the 15th of May. I need to start vaccinating that small cohort of midshipmen around the last week of this month, March. And then I hope to be able to start vaccinating all the rest of them in the first 3 weeks of April. And that will allow them to get through the two-shot schema, 4 weeks between them, and then develop the immunity with 2 weeks after that second shot. And there'll be an up and ready round for the fleet, and all the captains of the units out in the Navy fleet will be ready to accept them. And we can conduct summer training, which is such an important aspect of the development of a midshipman. Over.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I know my time is up, but if I could just ask for I wanted to ask about one of the issues, and they can respond on the record. Of course, I believe in mutual respect that is important for all our cadets, and no matter what service they're in. But a little bit just question about this pledge to respect the intersectional identities of service members at the Naval Academy. Like I said, it's my understanding that mutual respect is in leadership traits and leadership principles. That's already a part of the program and should already be well drilled into these cadets. And I just want to inquire about that. And since my time is up, you can reply for the record.
Appreciate that, Mr. Adderholt. Thank you. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan, and appreciate the chairwoman putting this hearing forward, and superintendents for your work. Gentlemen, I wanted to ask a little bit about the faculty. Could you describe the composition of your faculty at each academy? What's the mix of civilian and military professors, and how diverse is the population? And the types of qualifications, and if tenure applies. I just wanted to get a better understanding and hear that with my colleagues. If we could start with Superintendent Williams and then proceed, that would be appreciated.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. Yes, so our staff and faculty here are diverse. About 70 military, 30 civilian. We've been on that path for some time. I will tell you that we have at the core of it are our great postmans, or our department heads. We have 13 department heads, and these are men and women who are Army colonels who have devoted their life to their particular discipline and spend some time here. That's the one part of the triumvirate here. And then our great Army civilians, our senior Army civilians, who also who have been recently tenured in the last few years, who also add to the academic forward. They partner with those department heads. And then there's this rotational part of the faculty that are young captains and majors who provide intellectual capital back to our great Army. So this is Captain Major Williams. You know, they're midway through their career. They go back, receive a PhD, teach here for 3 years on a utilization tour, and then return intellectual capital back to our great Army. That's usually about a 5, and sometimes it could be a 6-year tenure. And so those are the different elements. You have more senior tenured professors, civilian, you have senior tenured colonels who have devoted their life to this academic profession, and then our rotational faculty who are younger officers who will return also to the Army and be the battalion, brigade commanders for our cadets. So the relationship and the sense of ownership that our young faculty have with these cadets is vital part of how we go forward. Thank you for your question, sir.
And sir, Lieutenant General Clark from Air Force, I'll add on, we're about 60% military and 40% civilian in our faculty. And like General Williams stated, our military faculty really bring an operational flavor to the academic curriculum. And of course, our civilians, many PhDs, many from other areas of academia who help us to bring that perspective to our program. I want to also highlight, though, we have coaches, we have air officer commandings who are in charge of each cadet squadron, with our Academy military trainers, our enlisted members who help to lead those squadrons, who also bring the perspectives that our cadets need in their development. I will say one of the things that we're working very diligently on is to increase the diversity of our staff and faculty, and to ensure that not only our cadets look like America, but that our staff and faculty represent that as well. That'll be a great benefit to our cadets' development, and we'll continue to work that. Thank you, sir.
Congressman Aguilar, we at Navy are a little bit different than my other two sister academies. We're traditionally 50-50. Today, as I speak to you, we're 53% civilian, 47% military professors, and it's a total of 600 faculty here. In that uniformed group of faculty, 19% of them are women, 19% of them are men or women, a minority. We continue to look at our hiring practices across the whole faculty to try to develop a diverse faculty workforce there, so that the young men and women that go to school here look and see men and women that may look like them. We have a tenure program here, so we have tenured professors, full professors, associate professors, and then each year, to fill the gaps, we hire a fluctuating number of adjunct professors to fill in where we may have holes on one particular year, and those professors come from a very diverse background, sir.
I appreciate the answers, gentlemen, and would just continue. And I specifically appreciate Superintendent Clark talking a little bit about the continued need to review hiring practices and to better reflect the diverse population that we want the academies to serve. So thank you, gentlemen. I know this is an evolving issue, and appreciate your openness to these questions on this topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Aguilar, appreciate you asking those very important questions. Judge Carter.
Mr. Chairman, before that, Tim?
Yes. Yep.
Judge Carter is going to cover for me. Unfortunately, I have a conflict. So the judge has got it from here. Thank you.
Okay. Judge Carter, you're also up for your 5-minute questions.
Thank you for recognizing me. Thank you to the superintendents for being able to be here and talk to us today. We are learning quite a bit. I'm going to ask a couple of things that go back when we were back talking about cyber, with the concept of all joint command and control. How are you attracting and retaining qualified civilian faculty in the technical disciplines? And what type of funding do you need to ensure that the U.S. maintains a resilient cyber force within the Department of Defense and with our intelligence partners? What kind of help do you need?
Yes, sir. I can start off with that. Lieutenant General Clark, we have majors and many classes throughout our entire curriculum that address our cyber needs. And as both General Raymond, our Space Force commander, who says that every Guardian has to speak digital as their language. They have to understand the cyber domain if we're going to be able to execute joint all-domain command and control. And General Brown, in his charge for accelerating change or lose, has emphasized that as well. So our majors in cyber, every course that we teach in cyber is critical for us. We're also breaking ground this month on our Cyber Innovation Center, which is an opportunity for us to bring in partners not only from the broader Air Force and Space Force, but also from industry, so that our cadets can have the opportunity not only to learn in academics, but also to experience the real world needs and address real problems. One of the areas that we could use help with, though, sir, is in our information technology. Our IT is woefully behind where we need to be a cyber, I think, provider of cyber excellence. Right now, we have needs for immediate funding for this year, funding unfunded requirements, plus we need money into the POM because our network is not the same network that the broader Air Force uses. We are on a .edu, whereas the Air Force is on a .mil. The .edu allows us to collaborate, it allows us to innovate, and it connects us with researchers and other universities that we need to be a world-class organization, so we don't fall under the normal IT funding that the rest of the Air Force comes under. So that funding that we need, not only now, but into the out years, is vital for us. In fact, it threatens our accreditation. During COVID, we've recognized our weaknesses as we've gone to more virtual classes. So we have great needs, I think, from a fiscal standpoint, to allow us to meet our aspirations to be that school of cyber excellence. So I will stop there, sir, but we appreciate any help that you can provide to move us forward with our IT so that we are the provider of cyber excellence. Over.
Anyone else
Carter.
want to comment?
The Naval Academy, we're proud to represent ourselves as a center of cyber excellence. We aggressively got after this about 12 years ago and committed ourselves to doing so. And just this year on my tenure, we opened up, I believe, one of the first cyber operations center buildings in the country. And we brought the capability here to be able to teach our midshipmen right from the ground floor at the top secret, specially compartmented level. And as you know, the topic of cyber, it's very unremarkable to teach it at the unclass level. So now when these young men and women graduate from the Naval Academy, having been exposed to cyber across their entire journey here, they're much more capable, much more aware, much more cognizant of how to fight and work and live within a cyber domain. We take on an all, many, few concept here. Every single midshipman takes 2 courses in cyber. We present many opportunities for many to be exposed to cyber through lectures and conferences and research projects. And we now have a cyber operations major in which 75 midshipmen matriculate to each year entering class. If I were to tell you what we have trouble with in attracting the best faculty to teach in cyber, it's being able to pay a cyber professor on a federal pay scale. That's very difficult to compete with what they can do out in private industry, sir. I'm not so sure how to crack that nut other than to present them really, really rewarding teaching fine young men and women at the Academy who are passionate to learn. We now present world-class facilities, but you do know that it would be very difficult to present a federal pay scale to someone steeped in cyber who can do a lot better on the outside. Over.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir. Sir, three components. The brick and mortar aspect, as I mentioned earlier, there's Cyber Engineering Academic Center, which will transform the very face of West Point. I know when we look forward to welcoming you back again, sir. You were here 2 years ago. That'll be transformational. But I will tell you, while we're waiting for that to mature, we enjoy efficiencies with the Army Cyber Institute, which is just outside West Point. And we attract right now the best and brightest from our civilian counterparts. So that becomes a skunk works for our cadets to work on their projects that they're working on, but also to be informed by the best and brightest in the cyber energy that we're realizing every single day. And in terms of our actual pedagogy, sir, we have 6 academic majors: computer science, applied statistics and data science, electrical engineering, information technology, and system engineers, producing about 100 cadets each year who are motivated, inspired to winning and defeating our adversaries in cyberspace.
Well, thank you. That's all good information. I know I've gone past my time. Just curious, and you might send me some information about any endowments you have for graduate students in the area of STEM, which would fit into our concept of future war fighting. I think that's important. Remember, we are the Appropriations Committee, and we are interested in how we can help, and that's why I ask these funding questions. I'll yield back.
Appreciate it, Judge. Mr. Chris.
The three of you, you know, in the military, I've been reading news accounts lately that the academies are grappling with white supremacy, racism, and extremism. And I'm curious what actions that the academies have taken to address any and all of these issues, please. For any one of the three of you.
Sir, General Williams at West Point, I'll start. So, sir, we have, as a part of, back to my earlier comment about what our chief refers to as our corrosives: sexual assault, sexual harassment, racism, and extremism. So the approach we've taken here, as I mentioned before, is how we've elevated character. What I don't want here at West Point is that we have sort of this whack-a-mole approach. We have to approach this comprehensively from an interdisciplinary standpoint. For all of it, this is about treating each other with dignity and respect. We start there and we end there in our small squads, peer-to-peer relationships. And so, sir, what we do, to answer specifically your question, we have what we've been done. We're on our 5th Honorable Living Day. So in 2 weeks, I will stand down the entire academy, the cadets, the community. There will be no work. There'll be no sports. No one will go to class, and we will focus on this very subject. The Secretary of Defense has given us some interim guidance on how these discussions will ensue, and I know my wingmen are working on it as well. But that for us is just a preliminary step. We will take it much further. The key to this, sir, is that these young men and women look each other in the eye and face this issue and talk to each other about this. So we will provide the space and the time for the academy to come together and talk about extremism. Thank you, sir.
General, if I could follow up, and thank you very much. I appreciate that. So when you stand down the entire academy and you discuss this, what's sort of the format? How do you do that? What is talked about? Have you done one yet already?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Not specifically in an extremism space, but in these other corrosives, we've done it. So the cadets actually demand them. They ask if they're a vital part of it. The cadets help us design what it's going to look like. So it usually starts in our stadium, sir, with myself and the other senior leaders, and I stand up and talk about our values and what's important and why it's important to be in this space. So I'll start off the day. And then normally what we found in the last one, we did one on racism last fall. We'll have a cadet panel. So the cadets will be up there and they'll share their experiences with their classmates. And there'll be real, raw conversations, which will pull at the emotive strings a little bit. And then from there, we'll bring in sometimes experts from the field, sort of referring back to the earlier question. But the most important vital part, sir, is the small group, not at the macro level, but at the micro level at the squads and platoons facilitated by our great TACs and TAC NCOs and our professors facilitating those questions, because our young men and women are at different parts of their 47-month journey. They're going to need a little assist. And so they'll have these discussions, but then our folks who have our majors and our colonels and our generals and sergeants and coaches will be part of this vital, active conversation, which will help them fill in the gaps if we need to, sir.
That's excellent. It sounds like to me, I have these yellow wristbands that I wear every day, and it says practice the golden rule every day. And of course, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have done unto you. And to me, that's the ultimate in character, that you treat people with mutual respect, with decency, and that you comport yourself that way. I try to do it every day. I don't always succeed, but I try. And it sounds like to me that that's sort of the road you're going down when you stand down the academy for a full day. No class, no sports, no nothing except talking about character and decency, goodness.
Yes, sir. If I could follow up. Absolutely, sir. That's exactly the heart of this. Nothing else matters except this. And then we have follow-on. We're not that so naive to think that that one day it's going to make a difference. It's going to send a clear and unambiguous signal to everybody on the post that the leaders care. But then there's the follow-up action. What is the action plan? What do we do after that date? And that's what we're finding. And we work with our cadets, and the cadets lead in this space. Our trust and peer cadets absolutely champion this space. And we look forward to talking to you more about that, sir, in the future. They do really well in facilitating these tough discussions.
General, I appreciate your answer. I'm out of time. I'll yield back, but God bless you and thank you.
I'm back, and I understand it's Mr. Diaz-Ballard's turn to ask a question.
Madam Chairman, thank you so much. We spent, all of you have spent, and I think it's been very productive, talking a lot about sexual assault, which is so important, and also the instances of cheating, for the lack of a better term. And obviously a big part of what you all do, and you do it better than anyone in the nation, and frankly, anyone in the world, is instill, character and character development. But you do a lot of that through peer-to-peer leadership. There was some conversation about that. Right now, with COVID and everything else, and we've seen the increase of incidences of, for example, of cheating, et cetera. But how are you able to instruct, get that character development when in fact, we're limited to the peer-to-peer interaction? And I don't know who wants to deal with it, and maybe all of you.
Sir, I can, Lieutenant General Clark, I can start with that. The character development, and here at the Air Force Academy, we have a leader of character development framework that our whole program is focused on, because that is the core of what we do. And we're able to actually do things virtually that we haven't been able to do in a world where we weren't as virtual. For example, we just had a National Character Leadership Symposium where we had dozens of leaders of character from around our country, regardless of some were military, some from the civilian sector. And what they do is they're able to share with our cadets and other partners that we invite into this symposium to give them examples and to help them understand what it means to be a leader of character, what it means to live honorably. And the theme for this year's symposium was warrior ethos. And we not only reached our whole cadet population, but we reached thousands of others outside of our population. But it's these kinds of examples and stories and opportunities for the cadets to see what that means. But also in our internal programs and processes, like you mentioned, peer-to-peer education is critical, but the virtual world allows us to reach people in different ways. And I believe that we're able to continue our program and still focus on our leader of character framework to develop those leaders. That is the core of our mission. Over.
Is there a way to kind of know if that is as effective, the whole virtual world as effective as one-on-one, human interaction when it comes to character development? And actually, same thing on, obviously, sexual assault and sexual harassment, which is the worst possible infraction, right? So is there a way to know, can we track how effective this is, this new reality of virtual, contact versus, human to human contact?
I think it's hard to know, sir, what, the end results would be, and is it as effective? My gut tells me that person to person, face to face contact in many instances is better. But when we are limited in the ways that we are doing the absolute best that we can. And I think that at least the feedback from our cadets is that they still have those opportunities, and we can't miss a beat. We don't have time to rest just because COVID is here and is a part of our lives now. We still have to develop these leaders because we still have to graduate these cadets when their time comes so that they can go out and serve. But I think your point is well taken. Sometimes face-to-face is just better. That human interaction helps us, but we are working to overcome some of those challenges. Over, sir.
And lastly, really on the same issue, I imagine that also, when it's more difficult to kind of find out, track, frankly, discover issues of mental health when you don't have, again, the one-on-one interaction. So I'm assuming that those are all challenges that you all are, I know that you're facing them, and I know that you're doing the best job, probably the best job in the country, but it would be interesting to kind of figure out what you're looking at, what's working, what isn't working on this new era that you all have kind of inherited of having to do this stuff virtually.
Sir, if I could comment, I will tell you that a lot what Rich talked about in terms of setting these frameworks. My dean does a great job with our professors here to set a framework that they can operate in. So she goes through a very deliberate process of training up and calibrating our leaders. And I'll give you an example. Last year, study of war and the human condition were the threads that linked whether you're on the STEM side or the humanities side. So she sets the framework out, and our great officers and civilians here move in that. Next year, the theme for next year is ethical leadership in a diverse world. So they now have the template, which they can then spend the spring and the summer preparing that way. And back to the metrics or measuring, I will tell you one technique we use in the honor thing, and Congressman Womack mentioned it earlier, but our special leader development program, allowing cadets, you measure on the front end of their 47-month experience, and then you measure on the aft end of their 47-month experience. And you can see the maturity in the writing in terms of how they think about what's happening to them, what's happening in the world around them. That's how you develop a lot of these metrics, which are very hard to tease out and things that are a little more opaque.
Correct. Mr. Kilmer went to vote, so Mr. Ryan, thank you for helping me out, and you can ask the next question if you'd like. I see you in your office. I don't think you can hear.
Boy, he's really paying attention, isn't he?
I know, he's hanging on my every word. There must be a technical issue with his. So I'll ask my question, and then when Mr. Kilmer and Mr. Ryan come forward, we can do that.
Smith.
So, and I keep going back on mute. I'm assuming people can hear me. They'll let me know if they can't. I'd like to talk about facilities for a few minutes. So when I reviewed the information from my staff regarding the needs of repairs on some of the items, they've been listed there for quite a few years. The committee had held a service academy hearing 2 years ago, and it really appears that items are still there from 2019. They haven't been addressed. They've either been not funded or underfunded. Let me give you an example. Support facility Camp Buckner, where I was 2 years ago. We saw serious issues with mold. Mr. Womack was there on that. Or the utility bridge at the Naval Academy, that urgently needs to be replaced. And if we lose that, that will be a catastrophe. So I'm going to press the secretaries of your services on those questions. Because these issues can't lay dormant, and 10, 20, 30-year plans for some of this stuff is putting a lot of hope and a lot of wishes that they're going to move forward. So I'm going to ask you gentlemen to take a minute and tell me why you think these delays remained and why these projects haven't been addressed in a timely fashion, because I'm going to ask your leadership why they aren't a priority. I'm not going to ask you why you don't think that they're a priority with your leadership. I'm going to ask them because we think it's a priority. If so we're going to have some questions that we're going to follow up on, but we just have a minute right now, and I've got a page of questions on these projects that the committee staff is going to be sharing with you, and then I'll share with the whole committee when we get the answers back. But what's the holdup on these projects not getting done, in your opinion? Because I think Mr. Womack and I and others have made it very clear in our conversations with the service heads that we're looking to see that these projects be finished. And maybe I'll start with you, Mr. Buck, because letting that bridge wait too long is in my opinion, a very unprofessional, dangerous, and foolish thing to do.
Thank you, ma'am, for that question and the opportunity to give a response. And I don't know whether my response mirrors my colleagues. So this is just unique to the Naval Academy and to our Navy. Since 2010, my budgets for sustainment, renovation, modernization have remained pretty constant, without recognizing the growth that we've had here of new construction. And then when we hit sequestration in 2013 and a significant reduction in budgets, our Navy as a whole had to reprioritize what was most important to the infrastructure for the whole Navy. And we all were affected by that, no matter what installation or where we were located in the world. And the Naval Academy wasn't immune from that. So we put on hold, as to use your word, we put on hold some really important projects to either renovate, modernize, and we began to focus just on sustainment, and sometimes sustainment with Band-Aids, just to get us through with leaky roofs and things like that, but not a whole frame up restoration where it might be needed. You've mentioned one of my top 3 priorities. The utility bridge is in need of replacement. McDonough Hall, which is the center of my physical fitness mission at the Naval Academy, is on the chart right now to be renovated, and we hope that funding remains that's been given to us. Our Navy in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 that we're enjoying right now revitalized our infrastructure budgets. And we have been healthy and been able to begin to plan back toward improving and addressing our infrastructure projects. What I want to leave you with and the committee with is we need to be sure that we have a consistent budget in each of the out years. That would be really important to our planning effort and our ability to know that we're going to get after our highest priority infrastructure projects.
Mr. Clark, if you take a minute, you were impacted by the recent storms, along with some other projects that you had. Is some of the issues with your pipes, is that being considered a priority to be repaired now by the Air Force to help you out with that? Sir, you're on mute.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
I can hear you now, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, it is a priority for our Air Force, but I will say overarching, our enterprise is constantly sustaining, restoring, modernizing across the entire Air Force. We do receive, I think, priority commensurate with the rest of the Air Force and Space Force mission. And we have been in a steady, I think, restoration and modernization mode for some time. As you stated earlier, all of our buildings were built at the same time back in the, in the 60s and the 50s. So we're seeing a lot of the issues that that are rising. They all arise in about the same time frame, and our Air Force is responsive to help us with this. It's just the problem is pretty significant, and we have a constant drumbeat. But I would say that we are right in line with the rest of our Air Force and as far as SRM goes. So we could always use more help from a budgetary standpoint, because there is a lot to do here, and we appreciate anything you can do for us. Thank you, ma'am.
And Mr. Williams, I'm gonna let you have the last word, because I mentioned your facility first to Mr. Womack, and I had seen it firsthand. Is that a 10-year, did you say, repair for those buildings? Some of them have mold, they have water issues, and that is that a 10-year spread out that they're giving you to replace the buildings?
Chair McCollum, thank you, and I appreciate your continued focus as you and Congressman Womack were out of 2 years. We actually were helped a lot by you coming out here to Camp Buckner. The Army has fully endorsed and integrated all aspects of our plan. We came up with a plan shortly after your visit, the USMA 2035 plan. FY 2130 facility investment plan, which I worked very closely with AMC and senior Army leaders, is fully endorsed. And and respect to Buckner, we are working right now. In a few weeks, we get out to the barracks and the mold. It's a two-phase project. The first part of the phase is focused on the barracks that we took you in, and you saw that mold. The second phase is a 5-year MILCON plan that gets at both where the task force that comes and participates with the summer training, Camp Natural Bridge, and also Camp Buckner. We feel very comfortable with what the Army is currently giving us with respect to funding associated with Camp Buckner, ma'am.
Well, we're going to follow up and make sure that, there's a reason why we became appropriators. It's nice to have great ideas and want to do all the wonderful thing the authorizers have, but without the resources to do it, they remain just great ideas.
Thanks, Chair.
So thank you. We'll be following up on that. Mr. Ryan, thanks again for helping me out. I'm sorry I caught you at a technical difficulty moment, and the time is yours now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I almost kept that gavel,
You have your own.
I appreciate it. I just have one question, and thank you for all the answers and thoroughness. I want to talk to General Clark for a second about the Academy, and you guys conducted a test of the new campus dining card. If you're familiar with this, and one of the issues that we've been working on a lot really is, combining the idea around, health and wellness, especially around diet, because we look at the cost of, what's of obesity, diabetes. It's more than a significant cost for us around healthcare for our active duty, and that makes its way into our VA budget as well. And really, we want to try to get to the root issue here, and that's really teaching our men and women in the academies, what to eat, how to really function at a peak level. And they're in so many ways not different than many college kids who all of us who've been to college know that it's not necessarily the best diet in college. So I want to ask you about this, the Mitchell Dining Hall facility. They were allowed to use cadets were allowed to use their meal entitlement outside of the Mitchell Hall dining facility at venues offering healthier offerings instead of going out of pocket for other meals. It's generally known that the service academies, they do not eat all their meals at the campus dining facility. We've heard that your program, not surprisingly, was extremely popular with the cadets who were fortunate to be a part of this test. But we heard that the test was cut short. And so if you could just speak in the next couple of minutes, why was the program stopped, and what were the key findings from from the program, and will you be implementing any of those changes into the program moving forward? Sorry, you're mute. You're still muted.
Oh.
There you go, General.
Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Apologies, little tech difficulty.
That's all right.
We
okay.
need that IT funding. That's what's going on there, sir. But I'll just say, sir, that your point is spot on. Healthy nutrition is key to peak performance here at all of our academies. The rigor of our programs demand that our cadets are healthy, that their nutrition is solid. And we have just hired a new dietitian for Mitchell Hall. We also hired an executive chef with a focus on providing nutritious and delicious meals to our cadets so that they do have the desire to go into Mitchell Hall, into the dining facility, to take part in that. And we're getting some good results so far. As far as the dining card project that we did, we started that, and we unfortunately did have to cut it short due to COVID. And COVID didn't allow our cadets to go to some of the other options that they had for dining. So we cut it short. We do want to reinvigorate that program, though, in FY22 so that we can provide those other options for our cadets to take part in. But regardless of how we do this, we want to ensure that it's always about their nutrition and that it's healthy options. So we'll monitor it. We'll probably start off small when we begin in FY 2022 with on-base opportunities and then look to perhaps expand. But we're going to start with our on-base options and provide them with healthy opportunities. Over, sir.
Well, I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, as we have talked, I want to do what we can from this committee, really across the academies and across the military. We invest so much money into our men and women, but yet we seem to lack the kind of initiatives around diet, nutrition, and we see it. The end result is around the diabetes and obesity issues that we have with active duty. And I believe that we have an opportunity with the academies really to set these young people up to really function at a very, very high level. I watch with great interest the pre-stories of the Super Bowl with Tom Brady and his diet and how he functions at such a peak level. We're putting a lot of money into these academies, a lot of money into these kids. We should try to get at least some level of that to our academies and our military. So with that, yield back the balance of my time, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last question, and it's 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, had to do with lunch and food. So perfect timing. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your accessibility to the committee. I think you know that we're here to make sure that our young men and women who go to our military academies graduate with a great education, a great sense of responsibility, a great sense of our appreciation for them. And part of the way that we do that is by the faculty that we give them and the facilities that they are attending, because we're competing, America's competing with all the other colleges and universities that are out there for the brightest and the most talented that our country has. So I want to thank you so much for everything, and we will follow up, especially on the maintenance and some of the facility issues. I look forward to COVID ending so that some of us can come out and visit your facilities and get to spend time with the midshipmen, as well as the cadets and those who are serving at the Air Force Academy. So that concludes today's hearing. And with that, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thank you again.